Welcome to another In Wheel Time podcast, a 30-minute mini version of the In Wheel Time car show that airs live every Saturday morning, 8 to 11 a.m. Central.
From the Sugar Shack World Headquarters, it's the In Wheel Time Car Talk Show. Coming up, we hope to have Hannah Mischenko with Zootobi.
All right.
With DUI information. You'll hopefully hear where Texas fits in that. We can still do the story without her, but I'd like to have her with us. Jeff has a segment on the top producing auto assembly plants in the U.S. Conrad has the racing calendar and the car clinic. And later we'll have a couple stories making automotive news headlines this week, outside of the big headline, which is the UAW strike that started on Friday. Just ahead, here on the In Wheel Time Car Talk Show. Howdy, along with Mike out of this world on my phone, Mars. We always need more Jeff Zekin. King Conrad DeLong.
And you are?
Nobody. Absolutely nobody. I'm just here filling a spot. That's all. I've elbowed my way in here, and somehow somebody let me in.
It's your garage, so we got to let you talk.
Don's garage.
Don's garage.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And it's actually not a garage.
No.
It never has been.
No.
There's not a hole big enough to put a car through.
Nope. It's purpose-built for studio.
It is. Yeah. A rehearsal studio, actually, is what this was for a band.
A rock band?
A kid band, yeah. A garage band, so to speak. At least that's what we used to call them back in my day.
Yeah, we're getting the band back together.
Yeah, we're putting the band back together. So the UAW strike. Shall we talk about that?
Might as well, because our guest is not going to be able to join us.
Why not?
Make something up.
Force majeure is what it says.
What does that mean?
Beats the heck out of me.
It's a word that I don't know how to pronounce, and I don't really know the complete definition of it.
So it started with the UAW demanding a 40% pay increase.
Yeah.
And now they've settled for a 36% pay raise.
I thought it was down to 18.
No. 36% pay raise. And the automakers have countered with an 18 and a 20% pay raise.
Now, let me ask you this. If you go to your boss and you said, I want a 36% raise, and I demand it, otherwise I'm going to go on strike. You know what they'd say? Hit the road, Jack.
Well, and to a degree they are, because, you got to remember now, they are striking select plants at Ford, GM,
to
and
begin with,
Stalannis
yes.
To begin with. Now, you know why they do that, right? Because all the other workers who are still paying their union dues because they're paid are funding the strike fund, because the employees, the union members who go out on strike, the union has some pay that gives those people money. So if they all strike at once, then the strike fund gets depleted. So now what they're doing is this selective strike. Well, funny thing is, Ford and GM are slowing down some plants and doing some layoffs at some plants as well. And that's going to, I bet you, impact the funding of the strike fund. So, mess with me, mess with you kind of thing is what I believe is going on. Ford's...
See, I never thought that, but yeah, it makes
Ford
sense.
is closing down and shutting down the Chicago, the Kansas City, the Kentucky truck plant, and the Louisville plant, and then GM is shutting down the Fort Wayne truck plant due to trying to manage high inventories at the dealerships. Because right now, if you want a white truck, that's all the dealerships have are white trucks.
Isn't it ironic that they're not the big three? They're the Detroit three, because you got Lexus, Toyota, Honda that will just suck them up in all of their profits. So and good for them. I hope they fire them all.
And none of them are UAW. The Toyota, the Subaru, the BMW, the Mercedes assembly that goes on here in the United States.
How about Tesla?
Are not, and Tesla is not UAW.
No.
So what GM is, what they're doing, what the UAW is doing, and I think it's a huge mistake on their part, they're going to force customers to go buy some of these other brands. Yeah. And once they do, they're never going to come back to GM, Ford, and Chrysler. Once they get a taste of the other brands, whether it's the style, design, quality, and such, doubtful that they're going to come back. So, the UAW's cutting their nose off to spite their face. I understand some of their reasons to strike is they want a pay raise. If you look at it, the CEO pay went up 40% over the last couple of years. All three of them are making over $20 million a year.
What does an auto worker make nowadays? More than anybody else.
And all of them make the same. Doesn't matter if you push a broom or if you're measuring the piston size for a cylinder.
Right.
Whatever level of knowledge you have, they all make the same.
And what other job category makes that money?
Nobody. But they're looking for the new pay raise that they're asking for. The average auto worker is going to make $300,000 a year, and they're also asking for a 32-hour work week.
I'll take $300,000 a year
on a 32-hour work week versus
32-hour work week. So so it's a 40% increase in pay and a 20% reduction in work. Well, sign me up as well.
How's that going to translate to how much a car is going to cost?
And the funny thing, the other thing I look at it is, they're complaining that the worker pay has only gone up by 6% over the last 4 years. Hey, UAW, you know who negotiated that contract? Thane negotiated the contract for the last 4 years that only gave you 6%. So now you've got this guy is trying to negotiate you a 40% pay raise. I think you are stepping in something that you're not going to be able to shake off your shoe. My personal opinion, because they're going to force people to go buy other vehicles, and they're never going to come back.
Have you ever been in a union?
No.
Yes.
Mars has.
You're a sheep. You're just a sheep. That's all you are.
Yeah. And they talk about how much the CEOs are making that are running the corporations, and I do endlessly to the point of driving.
I'm going to join a union. It's going to be great. No, they got into it. Let them suffer.
Nobody talks about how much Thane is making, because I think he's making over $3 million a year. And what does he do? Not a damn thing.
Full-time union president. $3 million a year. But the CEO pay is not. That's contracted. That's negotiated. The board is negotiating that. It's not like a worker that works under a contract, or even just a manager that's working salary. That's all contract negotiated. So the fact that the board wants to pay him $20 million is irrelevant to what they're talking about, because there's no connection to it.
But the
board could say, we're not going to pay him we're not going to pay the CEO anything for the next 2 years because we want to save that money. That would have no impact on the employees that are working under the contract.
I agree, but that is one of the points the UAW continues to bring up.
Every union does. Every time our union always did that. It was like, they make so much money and they got so much land. Well, that's the board. And, there's nothing you can do about that. You can sit there and say, we want our share. Well, then you're going to have to take the good with the bad. I even heard that on some commentators.
You just said
whenever the market falls and the company like Ford's lost $3 billion working on EVs. Well, you don't see any.
They've lost $6 billion.
Well, you don't see any UAW people taking a cut in pay to make up for that loss.
You just said at the board, the shareholders are the ones that vote them in. And who are the shareholders? Some of those shareholders are workers. Now, if they're voting those people in, it's like anything else.
That's right. They vote the board in, and then the board turns around and
then they go, "Oh wow, look at what was me."
Because your vote counts, and when you vote morons in ahead of you, you get morons leading you.
Just look at the federal government.
Whose fault is that?
Exactly.
People that work for them. There you go.
But if you're making $200,000 plus a year, you're not going to want to get rid of anybody that's going to start cutting your pay.
I was 18 years old. In a union, working in a factory, making $38 an hour, and then you get all your bennies on top of that. 18 years old back in the 70s. Unheard of.
And look at you now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm still pretty. But it's ridiculous. It was even ridiculous back then. Now, I didn't vote any of these people in, but I was expected to vote the way they wanted you to vote in a contract or with the union.
But you're $38 an hour.
And you didn't want to vote them out because you didn't want to lose your $38 an hour.
I don't think I ever voted. I don't think I ever voted in a union election.
I'll bet you voted every time. You just didn't know it.
No. Well, that's true, too. I didn't sign a ballot or submit a ballot, but yeah, someone probably did for the people that don't.
Well, they could put a serial number on every dollar bill. You'd think they could put a serial number on a ballot.
But no, I understand what you're saying, because whenever I got out of our union probably 3 or 4 years before I got promoted into a salary position for that very same reason, that they made our local president, a full-time employee. So this guy no longer had to work. All he had to do was go to the union hall, sit around there, and listen to people whine and complain about stuff. So I bailed. I mean, unions do some good stuff, but I'm one of those people that think they've outlived their primary use.
I actually received a dues check after I moved to Texas and everything, for a substantial amount of money that they reimbursed me some of my dues.
Really?
Yeah.
Good for you.
But you can't not pay the dues. If you're a member of the union,
they take it out of your, they take it out of your check.
If you're a member, yes.
Right. You would have to be a member to work in the plant. It's not like Texas a right to work state. You're going to go. In fact, the pictures I got of the plants coming up, one of them was the Fort Street plant that my dad worked at, my brother and I worked at. It's in the middle of the shots, but I'll bring it up.
And now Ford is also restarting 4 assembly plants in Mexico. UAW. I don't think UAW is in Mexico.
No,
but maybe Abbott could send some buses to Detroit.
Car haulers.
To help out?
The car haulers. We're going to fill up the car haulers.
There's a CAW. There's a Canadian Auto Workers, and UAW, which is American Auto Workers.
United Auto Workers.
But they represent the American employee, but I don't think there's a Mexican UAW. So the corporations are going to play the game. And
it's the Arriba Union.
And, as the UAW is going to strike, the corporations are going to look for ways to impact the strike fund.
Okay.
Pockets of the union.
So the UAW goes on strike. You got Stalannis, Ford, General Motors. What about all the vendors, all the suppliers, all of those folks that have a livelihood as well? They're not making the 44% increase. They're producing a widget that they use.
Right.
Now, they're not getting any of that. Now, some vendors are UAW. They're part of the union as well, but there's only a select few. There's only so many.
And if there's no plants working to take those widgets that they're building, then they're losing too.
Oh yeah,
they have no expectation. I mean, obviously, if you go out on strike, you're not going to get your money back. Particularly at that hourly rate, you're not going to 15, 20, 30% raise. It's going to take you forever to get your money back. But those guys that supply the widgets to them that are losing, they're not going to ever get a chance to catch it back.
Well, we talked about it last week, is the peripheral people, the guy that owns the bar across from the plant, the grocery store in the community, the manicurist. By the way, I have a pedicure today. The manicurist that's in the community as well, they're all impacted when these people go on strike and they're not working anymore. They're not spending any money.
Yep.
So it's a big, huge impact on the economy. On top of the fact of the inflation rates we have, they talk about inflation's going down, but inflation compounds itself year after year. Last year it was 9%. Well, this year it's 3%, but it's 3% on top of the 9%. They say the state of Michigan's consumer price index over the last 2 years is up 17%. And the unions, they're not keeping pace with their 6% contract that Thane negotiated for him 4 years ago. So, who's to blame that your contract isn't keeping up with the cost of living?
So my brother worked at the Jamesville assembly plant for General Motors. That the actual plant itself started in 1919 as a tractor factory. General Motors bought the tractor factory. Ultimately, that tractor factory went belly up, and GM started building cars and trucks there. I was driven by it a couple of weeks ago when I visited up there, where it was. They tore it down and donated all of the land to the city of Jamesville. The problem is that there is some ugly stuff that's in the dirt where that 1919, you got a bucket of oil, just go out there and throw it out in the back. So they've got to, if the city is ever going to do anything with this massive piece of property in Jamesville, it's got to get cleaned up, which will cost multiple millions of dollars. So GM said, okay, well, we'll just tear it down and you can do whatever you want with it. and there's a big, fence around it now. But to your point about the ancillary support people that supply the assembly plant.
The bar and the grocery store.
Yeah, and there it happens to be, and they drove me by this bar. And the bar is still there. I don't know how it stays in business, but it's this little bitty rinky-dink bar that's on the back end of the assembly plant. There's also a garage over there. There you can see where all of these
certain things were placed. Yeah.
Yeah. The people that worked in these ancillary businesses that had nothing to do with the car industry other than serving the people that worked there. Mm-hmm. Thousands of them. And over the decades, you can imagine probably millions of people that worked there at one point or another, because it was a very large, old assembly plant. Being built in 1919, you can just imagine what it looked like. But it's a real shame to drive by something like that, because besides what they made, it was a place that people made their living. It was influential on the entire cities. Right. Yes, absolutely. And so when I drove by the Belvedere assembly plant that Stalannis has, it's in mothballs right now on the side of the freeway between Chicago and Jamesville, Wisconsin. There's nothing there. I took pictures of it. Huge parking lots where the actual employees park. Nothing. I think they have one security guard there looking at the gate. That's about it. It's truly a sad thing when a factory like that shuts down, and I would imagine that
possibly more will.
Yeah,
because of this strike. As the domestic market share falls, they don't have the need for as many assembly plants, which is what's driven some of the closures already.
Well, I wanted to read this story. This is from Automotive News. The Detroit Three, who went on strike early Friday, don't churn out the full-size pickups and SUVs that generate the automaker's biggest profits, nor do they build the engines or transmissions needed to keep other factories humming. Instead, the UAW's unprecedented walkout against GM, Ford, and Stellantis targeted 3 assembly plants, where a shutdown won't make too big of a dent in the bottom line, at least for now. The plants make Chevrolet's 9th biggest seller, the Colorado midsize pickup, Ford's number 4 utility vehicle, and number 3 pickup, the Bronco and Ranger, and the Jeep Wrangler, an SUV that dealers aren't expected to run out of for nearly 3 months. The plants, Wentzville Assembly in Missouri for GM, Michigan Assembly near Detroit for Ford, and Toledo Assembly in Ohio for Stellantis, employ about 13,000 hourly workers, or roughly 9% of the UAW's membership at the Detroit 3. The strategy will have an immediate effect on vehicle production at those plants and on the suppliers that sell to them, but so far it only deals a limited blow to the automaker's overall U.S. operations. That could change quickly, though, as the union is saving firepower to escalate the strike and ramp up pressure on the automakers if negotiations fail to reach a resolution soon. UAW has a strike fund of $825 million and at estimated costs of $8 million per week. A strike could last for more than 100 weeks, according to Wells Fargo research published Friday. The 3 plants that went offline Friday accounted for an estimated 11% of the Detroit 3 light vehicle production in 2022, according to the report. Some dealers were not immediately worried. Texas dealer, Houston dealer, Stephen Wolf, who owns Helfman Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram Fiat in Houston, said he had expected the union to strike. The stoppage in Toledo would need to last around 45 to 60 days before Wrangler and Gladiator inventories become a problem at his store.
So they're basing the strike on the amount of money they have in the bank.
In the strike fund,
yeah.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So if we running low on that, the strike ends.
But not necessarily. They could run out of money, and the people on the line that's striking, they might not get a paycheck. That's happened in the past too.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing that could happen is the federal government could fund it. They're talking about, what is it, the writer's strike in California right now. The state of California is thinking about paying those people unemployment. Well, I could easily see the federal government doing the same thing for these people out on strike.
All right, time to change directions here on the In-Wheel Time Car Talk Show. Let's talk about the race card. Racing season is beginning to wrap up.
Yep, wind it down.
Erica is currently qualified number 1 in Pro Stock in the current drag race.
With a 649, which is just tremendous time. She's the only one in the 640s. That's Maple Grove this weekend, NHRA. You'll be able to see it on Fox Broadcast and FS1. Bristol night races tonight, which is always good. Bristol being a short track, they'll be pushing each other around, and no doubt tempers will flare. Next weekend, NASCAR will be at Texas, and then October 1st, they'll be at Talladega. Formula One this weekend is in Singapore, and then next weekend they're in Japan. IMSA is at the Indianapolis Road Course, the old F1 course. So the Cadillac DPIs, the Corvette and stuff will all be at Indianapolis this weekend.
Cool.
And then IndyCar finished. They had their Laguna Seca, and they're done for the season.
Wow, must be nice. All right.
Shame.
By the way, the In Wheel Time race card is sponsored by Texas Nostalgia Modified Production.
Cool.
You know, we were talking about assembly plants a minute ago and the strike and everything, but when the assembly plants are up and running, Jeff has a feature on the top producing assembly plants
I've
in
got
America.
the top 6 due to time. There's several others. You could go top 10, top 15, but I did this just because of that, because of the lead-in article and the gentleman from Ford and all that good stuff. So let's get this going. And the number 6 is a General Motors plant. Now, none of these photos have anything to do with what we're talking about, so they're just random shots. General Motors plant in Fort Wayne is a Roanoke, Indiana plant. They produce 307,454 cars. Fort Wayne is the busiest General Motors plant in America and is responsible for the company's 2 large pickup trucks, which would be the GMC Sierra and the Chevrolet Silverado. It is a 2.85 million square foot factory, and it opened in 1986.
Do you know how many square feet that is? You can't stand at one end of the factory and see the other end when you're inside of it.
And it's relatively automated. There's a lot of computer stuff
Number
going
5
on.
is Toyota, Georgetown, Kentucky, 315,889 cars. Toyota has long manufactured many of its cars in America, including the top-selling Camry, the midsize. The Camry is assembled at the Toyota plant. It's 7.5 million square foot plant in Georgetown.
Huge.
Yeah, it's the largest plant outside of the one in Japan. Now, that's the Fort Street plant. That's where my dad worked. That's where I worked. That's where my brother worked.
Is it still there?
It's leveled. It's gone. But this is the one that we're talking about now. Number 4 is the Nissan North America in Smyrna, Tennessee. 333,392 vehicles. Smyrna is one of the oldest foreign auto plants in the U.S., with production starting back in June of 1983. It's also the second highest producing foreign-owned factory in the country, thanks in part to the Nissan Altima.
Not UAW.
Not UAW. They produce all kinds of things: the Pathfinder, the Frontier, the Maxima, and also the Nissan Altima. So those are the ones for the Nissan plant. Number 3 is Hyundai. Hyundai Motor Manufacturing in Alabama, Montgomery, Alabama, 342,162 cars. They may be designed and engineered in South Korea, but the Hyundai Elantra and Sonata are both assembled in the U.S. The 2 million square foot factory was officially opened in May 2005. This was all built on a handshake. Number 2, we talked about it, and it was Brian from Ford. Ford Dearborn plant in Dearborn, Michigan, 343,888 cars. This is a Dodge picture, by the way. It opened in 2004. The Dearborn truck plant is home to America's best-selling vehicle, the Ford F1 Series. Last year, they put together 323,415 copies of the F-Series, and then 473 copies of the now-defunct Lincoln Mark LT pickup. It's a 203 million square foot floor space for that particular plant.
Been there.
Now, number 1, and we talked about it earlier, the Ford Kansas City assembly plant in Claycomo, Missouri, not the Kansas City side, but the Missouri side. 460,338 vehicles. Henry Ford, who pioneered the moving assembly line, would surely be proud to see Ford Motor Company factories on this list. If you go to the top 10, Ford's on there 3 times. General Motors only on there once. It is a 4.7 million square foot plant. It also produces all of the Ford F-Series. That's the Rouge plant right there. Look at that healthy thing there, boy. I tell you what. But you want to go there and breathe that air.
Well, I'll tell you what, the time that I went there, it was a new plant. They had torn down the original Rouge River plant, which was the actual first plant that Henry put together, right there across from Windsor, Ontario. And they made the frames. They cut the wood. They made the glass.
Produced their own electricity.
Yep. And formed their own steel and they did everything at the Rouge River Assembly. Now,
and that's why the river was red, because they dumped all that waste into the river.
And all of the property is still there, although there's a lot of it that's not used anymore, because you could just imagine all those other factories that supplied it, the Rouge River factory, that they just took up a lot of space in this part of land.
Well, and then in the Texas area, we have Arlington Assembly Plant that builds GM utilities.
And they're about to expand.
And Suburban, And then the San Antonio plant for Toyota builds Tundras and Tacomas.
Yep.
And then there's a plant in Shreveport, Louisiana as well, which is just across the Texas border.
And don't leave out the Tesla plant.
Yeah, you could do research. You could get the top 50, the top 20, whatever you're looking for in that category of what information you need. I did 6 for time.
So it's going to have an impact on Texas as well. The strike is. They say for every employee on strike, there's 6 to 10 ancillary people who are impacted by it.
Yep. I believe it. Hey, the In Wheel Time Car Talk Show is available 24/7 through the iHeart Radio app. Just look for In Wheel Time Car Talk. We also video stream on Facebook, YouTube, and InWheelTime.com. Podcasts at your fingertips on over a dozen of the most popular podcast outlets. The In Wheel Time Car Talk Show continues right after this quick break.
The original group of Loopy Tortilla restaurants will have you telling your family and friends just what the original recipes mean when it comes to the best fajitas in Southeast Texas. Founder Stan Holt invites you to visit the original Loopy Tortilla near I-10 and Highway 6. Here's the original house that inspired the design of all the rest and the original charm that helped make Loopy Tortilla the go-to destination for Houston Tex-Mex. Speaking of original, nothing can compete with the original lime pepper marinade that everyone will agree makes Loopy Tortilla award-winning beef fajitas the best anywhere. Loopy Tortilla Katy is another location that gives you the same quality and service Houstonians have come to expect at Loopy's. It's located just off I-10 and the Grand Parkway at Kingsland Boulevard in Katy. Find yourself in Aggie Land? Head to the Loopy Tortilla in College Station, located just around the corner from Kyle Field. It's a great place to enjoy those famous frozen margaritas before or after the game. Headed east to Louisiana, stop in at the Loopy Tortilla in Beaumont. It too's on I-10. You can't miss it. The original group of Loopy Tortilla restaurants invites you in for the best Tex-Mex anywhere. You own a car you love. Well, why not let Gulf Coast Auto Shield protect it? Houstonian John Gray invites you to his state-of-the-art facility to introduce you to his specialist team of auto enthusiasts. We promise you'll be impressed. Whether you're looking to massage your original paint to a like-new appearance, apply a ceramic coating, install a paint protection film, nano-ceramic window tint, or new windshield protection called ExoShield, Gulf Coast Auto Shield is where Houston's car people go. Curbed your wheels? Instead of buying new, why not have them repaired? How about a professionally installed radar detector? Gulf Coast Auto Shield does that too. Get a peek inside the shop and look at the services offered by getting online and heading to gcautoshield.com. Better yet, stop by their facility at 11275 South Sam Houston Tollway, just south of the Southwest Freeway, and get a personal tour. Gulf Coast Auto Shield is your place to go for all things exterior. Call them today, 832-930-5655 or gcautoshield.com. The award-winning In Wheel Time Car Talk Show is available on the most popular podcast channels out there in 30-minute episodes. We realize our 3-hour live show can be difficult to catch in its entirety, so now you can listen every day to a convenient, fresh 30-minute episode. Check us out on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, and Audible, along with a dozen more. In Wheel Time has the most informative automotive guest interviews and new car reviews, along with popular features including Conrad's Car Clinic and This Week in Auto History, along with automotive news headlines. Our live broadcast airs every Saturday, 8 to 11 Central on InWheelTime.com, the iHeart app, and on YouTube. Be sure to say hello when we're broadcasting from the Tailpipes and Tacos Cruise Inn, Autorama, and the Houston Auto Show, among others. Now, it's easier than ever to hear about all things automotive all week long. You're invited to join fellow car enthusiasts in becoming part of the ever-growing In Wheel Time Car Talk family. Don't forget those 30-minute podcast episodes on your favorite podcast channel. That's it for this podcast episode of the In Wheel Time Car Show. I'm Don Armstrong, inviting you to join us for our live show every Saturday morning, 8 to 11 a.m. Central on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and our InWheelTime.com website. Podcasts are available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, iHeart Podcast, Podcast Addict, TuneIn, Pandora,